Welcome to TAO-Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Lou Corleto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this special episode of the TAO-Living podcast, the Art of Living. And I say special because today I am so grateful to have my current guest, who is the founder and director for the Center of Neuroacoustic Research in Carlsbad, California. This research facility is living into the healing of body, mind, heart, and spirit through the application of scientific sound. He is considered the world's leading expert and premier in sound healing research, brainwave entrainment expert. He's a high-tech personal transformation innovator, motivator, and futurist. He's a physician, musician, composer, inventor, educator, and author. How many CDs do you have now? Over 100? Because it's a lot.
I have a lot. I know I lost count at one point. I think there's something like, it depends. Some of the CDs, CDs don't exist anymore, but in the beginning I had single CDs. Some were 2 CDs in a pack, some were 4 CDs in a pack. So if you, and now it's all downloads.
Right.
So now I'm going to download not a CD, but a track.
A track.
My tracks are 30 minutes long.
Right.
So I've got 130-minute tracks.
Right.
I don't know. You look back, and I guess you keep your nose to the grindstone for long enough, and your hair gets gray, and you've got a lot of accomplishments, and you look good on paper. Like when you read all that stuff about me, and I'm going, "Whoa, that guy's amazing."
Yeah, that guy
should have treated myself with more respect.
I'd like to meet that guy. Who is that? Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a brief summary of the depth and breadth that this man called Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, inhabited in this body, has and is achieving. So I was just sharing with him before we went live. I was on, he does a weekly, or at least that I know of, a weekly live cast where he just unpacks current cutting edge wisdom, neuroscience, sacred geometry, fractal mathematics, all connected to sound and frequency.
Yeah.
And so we'll have all these links in the show notes so you can access this man's world for sure. And I'm so grateful to have him here. So welcome and thank you so much, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson.
Yeah, good to be here.
On that note, I'll kind of segue into that. So yesterday, when you were when you were sharing about the meeting between Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, the way when they first encountered, it brought me back into a memory where my most influential teacher, when I was first blessed to enter his house, I was in my late 20s, he was in his mid-late 80s, and he is he's got just reams of handwritten notes like this high in this room, and he just tossed them in the fireplace. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Yeah, and I'm diving in the fire and pulling them out.
Oh my
He's
God.
like, no, Lou. I said, no, what are you doing? Right. This is just like, I don't even know what you're saying. So at least let me have these so I can keep. He's like, no. And he just keeps burning them. Right. I'm like, please. He's like, you've got to do your work. I'm like, I will, but this will help me. I'm like arguing.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me when you talked about how
it's like
Gurdjieff and his
like
students.
a Tibetan sand painting.
Yeah. The Tibetans blow it away. Like, don't. So something else that you shared towards the end, and I just love it because to me it's part of what I'm doing my best at, which is serving people to remember, right? And that's when you shared this just gentle but brilliant synthesis of mechanical faith, philosophical faith, and conscious faith. If you wouldn't mind just unpacking that again real quick, I would love to let that permeate into the field for a moment.
Yeah, Gurdjieff had this thing about human beings are 3-brained beings. a physical body, an emotional body, and a mental body. And each of those bodies had a physical, emotional, and mental part. And that makes 9 personality types that were spun out on that Enneagram diagram with 9 points that are connected in a funny kind of esoteric way with an equilateral triangle in the middle, the 3-6-9 triangle. It's funny to see all the hoopla recently about the magic of 3-6-9,
right?
Because that's where it came from. It's, you know, but he had this thing about the faith. I can't remember the quote exactly, but it was conscious faith, and one was sort of faith coming from the emotions, one was faith coming from the physical body. So there's mechanical faith.
It was foolish.
It was foolishness, and that's mechanical faith of going to church every Sunday and like standing up and singing and sitting down and listening to a sermon, and then going home, and that's just part of a routine that you do, like going to work. There's no connection happening there. It's a mechanical thing that you do because somebody told you that if you do this, you go to heaven. And then there's the emotional faith, and I can't remember what that quote was exactly, but that's more of the person who is a cult follower.
Slavery, emotional faith is slavery.
Yeah. So you're a slave to a cult figure, a cult-like figure from your emotional center, that you're completely tied into following this, no matter what the evidence to the contrary might be. That's the world of sort of cognitive dissonance. No matter what somebody comes and tells you about this figure that you're following blindly, blind faith kind of idea is dangerous. And then there was conscious faith, and conscious faith is freedom. And what he meant by that is which kind of boils down to when I was in clinical practice with patients. People were coming with all kinds of different conditions, flying in from different parts of the world. I was the witch doctor at the end of the trail who had the final answer, because I had a special bag of tricks that I had collected because of my own personal story of meetings with remarkable men. Being blessed by having teachers and mentors that were just so far over the top that I learned and gleaned and collected, and then I discovered on my own, and all of that became this new tailor-made sort of holistic approach that I had. But one thing that I noticed with the people who had the most powerful healings, because there was physical levels of healing, physical detoxifications that had to take place, and then there were emotional detoxifications of emotional traumas that had to take place. So that's the physical body, that's the emotional body, and then there's mental body, self-defeating belief systems that start to arise from the things that have happened to you. Feelings that I'm not good enough, or no matter how I struggle, I'll never get well, or no matter how many people I meet, I'll never truly fall in love, or because I'm unlovable or something, and no matter how much I struggle, I'll never make it. The big three, money and love and health. But there's a fourth one, and it's a spiritual one. And when I would see people going through detoxifications of these various modes and decrystallizing these self-defeating belief systems, the biggest healing came from when it landed in the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm all had to do with discussions that I was having with people during the course of these various treatments. part of those discussions were to reawaken the erroneous idea that we have adopted through social engineering that we received in school and in social pressure groups and in advertising and television and all of the rest, who've taught us that we're ordinary. That I'm an ordinary person with a job, and I get up in the morning, I go and do this thing, come back, make money, pay bills, have children, send them to school. That the world is a place of jobs and cars and highways and television and politics and war, and that it's all very ordinary. That I'm not a magical being that's going through the biggest, most epic journey of all time, on a path to discover the true nature of my soul, which is eternal and has the biggest and the greatest wisdom of all time, who knows how to grow my body out of 2 cells and differentiate the tissues, make it all run on automatic without me knowing what the hell is going on under the hood. It's big and it's magic, and I'm in it, and I'm not recognizing it. Mm-hmm. I'm going through life, as Gurdjieff had said, asleep. Asleep meaning without recognizing the magicness of my life, or the fact that I'm alive, period, in this amazing world where I can, walk out my door and see a tree and be blown away, right? Or take my shoes and socks off and stand in the grass and be blown away. Simple things. And so we're all fated to walk this path in life. And it's the path, the spiritual path, to find the meaning of why I'm here. Why did the universe see fit to crystallize me out of solution into this form, which is unique and will never happen again, has never happened, will never happen again? My fingerprint in the universe is unique. I have unique sets of talents that were created specifically for one job only. My hyperdimensional puzzle piece in the continuum is essential for the whole puzzle to hold together. Mm-hmm. So I'm an essential piece. I have a job that I have to do, and it's my job to find out what that job is and then do that job. And if I'm not on that search, if I'm at least not on that search, then my spirit is crying in pain. Mm-hmm. So I'm on this road for that, and I'm fated to walk this road, and I'm fated to come to a fork that always happens. There's always a fork that I come to. And now I'm fated to make a free will decision of which fork am I going to take. That's now up to me. The right fork is the pulling of my heartstrings, and the yearning of my soul wants to go this way. It knows that that's the way I'm supposed to go. I follow that light, and it will lead me to the answers. Mm. But there's no visible means of support of how I'm going to make that work. My head brain is thinking, how am I going to make a living doing that? I mean, how am I going to be safe doing that? Because it's a tightrope across a chasm with no net, and I don't see how it's going to work out. Meantime, all of the the adults in the room of my life are whispering in my ear, stop being naive, grow up and get a job. Because that's the left fork. The job and the paycheck and the retirement and the 401k, and I've got this kind of formula here of safety, which is erroneous and fake. There's no safety anywhere.
Right.
I mean, it used to be back in the 50s, it used to be safe. You could get a job in a company and be there your whole life and get raises and get a pension and retire at 65 and live the rest of your life. And there was a certain loyalty of you in a contract with a company that you work for. That is all gone. That doesn't exist anymore.
The illusion of security.
It's the illusion, yeah. So at some point, when you're a child, you don't even see the left fork. As a child, it's all right fork, following your heart, and the universe is opening up like a flower to you, and childhood is a magical experience. But at some point, you see the left fork for the first time in your life. And at some point, you're the one who's going to have to graduate from the family nest, and you're going to have to take care of your life. You're going to have to figure out where the money comes from. You're going to have to take responsibility for your health care and all the other stuff. And you start seriously listening to that left fork argument. And so for every single person, there's the moment in your history, your personal history, when you first chose the left fork. That's for all of us. Mm-hmm. All of us chose the left fork at one point in our life. And we abandoned the right fork, and we stepped off of the grand magical path into a mundane, ordinary path. That's a little circle that's going nowhere. And at that moment is when the spirit, the child in you, cries out in pain, and is now lost in the woods and not on his path, has no idea what happened to that path. How long ago was it before I was there? And so there's a sickness of the soul that it starts to exert itself into my physical, emotional, and mental bodies as symptoms, as it tries to gain my attention to get back on the correct path. And many people in their own storyline get back on that path in various ways. Something happens and I get back, and other times I have to go into such depths of pain and suffering and sickness that I end up with cancer, and I go through the hospital system and end up not finding answers there, and know that there's a deeper answer of where this is coming from. Cancer doesn't arrive from Venus and land on your body, and then the medical system heroically comes and shoots it dead. It arises from inside of you, and there's an answer there that you're searching for, which eventually, in many of those cases, would land in my doorstep, the witch doctor at the end of the trail. And so the spiritual detoxification was teleporting back in time to the first time I ever made that decision to go to the left fork instead of the right one. And realize what was behind that, because that was the beginning of my disease. And what was behind it in every case is fear. I don't know how I'm going to make it this way. And now I've got to grow up and I have to take care of myself. So I can't afford to just keep going that way because my parents are paying the bills and taking care of me. I now have to take care of me, and I can't be so footloose and fancy free. And that's erroneous. That's not true at all. But underlying that fear is the nub of the problem, that it's my relationship to the heart and soul of the universe itself. What do I believe this is all about? Do I believe that the universe, in my heart and soul, do I believe that the universe is a hostile place that I have to fight tooth and claw for my little spot and then defend that spot for the rest of my life? Or is the universe a grand, beneficent place whose sole interest is to foster the growth of my soul and will have my back if I take the right fork and have no idea how I'm going to make it that way? That I understand underneath all of it that the way it all works is a partnership between me and the soul of the universe, that I, with blind conscious faith, step onto that tightrope across the chasm with no visible means of support, because I know that the universe is going to have my back, that even though I can't see how this is all going to work out, I have conscious faith that this is the best path of the best possible outcome of anything that could work out for me. And so I step forward with a certain attitude that the universe is going to have my back. That's my faith, my conscious faith. And in reality, it was never my job to know how it's going to work out. My job is the dumbed down job. Right fork, left fork. That's my job. If I step on the right fork, it's because I know the universe has got my back. If I step on the left fork, I don't believe that's so. I don't believe there's a universe out there that's going to have my back. I believe it's up to me, that I have to fight in the universe tooth and claw and make my place. And that's a devastating self-belief system. But once you surrender yourself to the other one, because the very first time you do that, when it's all up to you and there's no backing from parents or somebody else, that's you and the universe. That's the most difficult one, the first one. When you do that and you see the universe does have your back, and you see that how it works is that when I make that decision, I step on that path, and all of a sudden this magical series of things start to happen. Synchronicities start to take place. Doors open by themselves. Lights turn green. The wrong phone call is just the person I need to talk to. It goes on like that. It becomes this serendipitous series of synchronicities that fill in all the spaces of what I need as I make my next step. So every step I take, the universe puts a foothold underneath that step so I don't go off the cliff, right? So it's dancing with the universe. It's the tango. And the further you go down that path, the more intense it gets. The more obvious, the painfully obvious it gets that this is so, that before you know it, you're caught up in a world of experiences that's mind-blowing, astounding, where things just drop in your lap, things happen by themselves. You realize this is way bigger than you. And that your real job is to surrender to the flow.
Beautiful.
The better you get at it, like a musician, the better you get at it, the more you flow with it, and the bigger things happen, and the more mind-blowing it all comes by itself. And then next thing you know, you've got gray hair, and you're doing an interview, and somebody's reading this long list of, quote, your achievements. When you realize in your heart of hearts that your achievements were not you. Your real achievement was letting go to that process and allowing it to happen and flow into your life. And so, for instance, like when I was, I thought I was going to be an artist, and I was an artist and a musician and a filmmaker. I went to art school in the 60s. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. That's what I thought I was going to do. And the universe had other plans. I mean, the universe thought, said, And you might think this is what you're going to do with your life, but no, this is just the prep in kindergarten for bigger plans that I have for you. And I graduated and did all kinds of things, had some businesses, and 9 years later, so I graduated from art school in 1970, had some businesses. 1977, I'm deciding to go to chiropractic college because my best friend that I went through art school with and have kept, my oldest friend, is working on me on the phone. It's going, hey, my brother went to this chiropractic school. You won't believe what's going on there. All that stuff that you studied about esoteric and the body as a textbook of universal law and all that stuff, it's there. Except it's medical level, anatomy and physiology and body chemistry and neurology. You now get to see it in its nth degree of the esoteric secrets of the body revealed to you.
Mm.
And so I went out to Iowa and hung out for a week and attended some of the classes, sat around. It blew my mind. I came back all ready to go. And here I am back with all my stuff, my films and my cameras and my musical instruments and my artwork and all the other stuff in this place that I had, beautiful place in New York State. And I'm now thinking, wait a second, I must have been out of my mind. How am I going to get all the way to Iowa? I mean, how am I going to move all this stuff? It's going to cost thousands of dollars to move this stuff. And where am I going to move it to? What about first and last month rent? I mean, what about school costs? I mean, medical books are expensive. They're $200-300 each. And how much is school going to cost? I mean, it's like all this stuff. I mean, like that part of your mind comes in. And I firmly kind of believe that there's sort of a circle of elders up there who got drafted to handle your case.
Mine are doing penance.
Yeah, these poor bastards are being punished, you know. It's like, yeah, your assignment, Jeff Thompson. They go, no, what did I do? No. Yeah, so they're up there like watching out for me, and they're all going, oh my God, he's talking himself out of his path. What are we supposed to do? What are we going to do? So they burned my house down. All my musical instruments, my films, my cameras, all my artwork, everything gone. No record of me before 1977. It's all gone, wiped out, gone. Insurance money is just enough to travel to Iowa and first and last month rent and school books and all the rest. And I can travel light.
I had my Star Trek
problem solved.
Yeah, beam me down, Scotty moment. Same. I packed all of my belongings into my car and slept in the parking lot of chiropractic school. Had no place to sleep. You know, going through the first quarter, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, how did I even get here?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So which school was that? Where'd you go? I went to Palm.
Yeah, I started life in '88.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so yeah, and then when you get there, I mean, for me, you know, chiropractic school is such a trip. You're being exposed to levels of information, anatomy, physiology, lab science, myology, arthrology, you know, osteology, embryology. It's like you're studying all the muscles and all the bones and all the joints and the wiring diagram of the brain and nervous system. The level of detail is so far beyond. I just remember at one point looking at all this and going, I'm a fool. There's no way you could memorize all this stuff. It ain't going to happen. I mean, and then I see all these, you know, idiots in my class. Some of them are idiots. I mean, going, if they can do it, I can do it. There's chiropractors all over the world who've gone through this. They're regular people who are more intelligent than normal, but you don't have to have a 4.0 average. That doesn't guarantee that you're a good person or that you're a good healer. It guarantees you're a smart person, and you maybe can memorize a bunch of facts, better than somebody else. But I can do this. Others have done it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out how to do this. For me, because I'm an artist, I realized that if I drew the muscles, if I did very tight drawings of medical illustrations of the bones, of the joints, of the muscles, of the nerves, of the wiring diagram of the brain, if I drew it and I labeled it, by the time I was finished, it was burned in my brain. Hand-eye coordination, all this other stuff was the secret for me. Other students, saw these drawings and thought, whoa, those are great study guides. Could I have a copy of that? Next thing you know, I'm publishing them and putting myself through chiropractic school as a medical illustrator. And I'm going, how could I ever have figured that I would be doing that? And those kind of things, this whole story of thinking you're going to be an artist and a musician and ending up as a doctor and a medical illustrator is the kind of story that unfolds when you walk that right path.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
you get a job and you do the same job for 30 years, and there you go. It's like,
sorry about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I asked Dr. Thompson to start off with that description that I heard him share yesterday, for me, it's the essence of what we're sharing in the podcast. But the essence of the work is when you remember that you're the driver and not the vehicle, right? When you remember to reconnect to truth and source of who you be, not the stories that, as he described, that we're programmed to run, to be on automation, to be the worker bee, right? That's not your lot in life. And the courageous act of saying yes to the right fork. And once you do, as he described, the magic that unfolds, the providence that shows up, right? That's where the yumminess comes in. And so, oh Lordy, yeah, there's so much. I first crossed Dr. Thompson's world a couple decades ago. We were leading healing retreats out in the ocean with wild dolphins, was part of it, 6 days on a catamaran. And so I got celestial dolphins, right? And that's how I first entered your world. I went, oh, okay. And so for listening audience, Celestial Dolphins is one of his amazing pieces where it's NASA sounds and dolphins and this beautiful, just sonic dance that awakens all your systems. And so that's when I continue. I'm like, well, what's this? And then I discover the depth and breadth, or at least parts of the depth and breadth of where this man plays. And the latest of Iota is beautiful.
Iota.
And so again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have links to his site because it is yumminess. So the newest is oxygen, right? The element of oxygen, a small undertaking that scientifically accurately creating the periodic table. Sound. And what I loved when you shared, so if it resonates, if not, we'll keep going, that when you first were playing with this and putting this together, that you put a group of people through the process by listening to the sound, the frequency of oxygen, that their oxygen saturation levels went up, right? So technically that can only occur when you're either doing some kind of breathing or sucking in O2. Yet this was only listening to the frequency, the sound of oxygen, and their system went up, right? So
yeah, that's another kind of interesting, funny story. I had these. So just as a background, I've developed a system of monitoring the autonomic nervous system on a computer screen. So you hook some pads up to your wrists. It measures the electrical activity of your heart, does a bunch of fancy math. And the next thing you see is on your computer screen, the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system live.
Beautiful.
Normally, we should be living in a zero stress state. But if you've had a series of traumas in your life, physical or emotional or mental, you can get locked into a sympathetic on that's stuck there. And then the internal physician program can't get back online, which requires zero stress. And then that's the reason why the scientific community worldwide recognizes that stress is the ultimate cause of disease. They call it allostatic load, how much stress coming at you and how intact is your stress handling system to deal with it. So we can see when somebody comes in and their sympathetic is stuck on and they're burning up all their resources, and they've been doing it for years or decades, and now they've got all these quote diseases. Our innovation is to use a precisely tuned sound frequency to push the reset button and bring it back. This frequency is accurate to a couple of decimal points. Now we're in the law of octaves, in the laws that govern sound, acoustic physics. So when we ping the wine glass, pretend this is a wine glass, ping the wine glass, and it makes a note, that's its fundamental resonant frequency as an atomic mass structure. If you sing that note back to the wine glass, it starts to vibrate, sympathetic vibration. If you sing any octave of that note, the wine glass vibrates. If you sing any harmonic of that note, the wine glass vibrates. Octave resonance, harmonic resonance. The body is set up the same way. If I find a frequency for the autonomic nervous system that returns it to zero stress, I can calculate all the octaves of that frequency. And the lower octaves would vibrate your body and activate the vibration sense network in your body through a specially designed sound chair or a sound table with big speakers. If I keep calculating, I've got brain frequencies that are below the range of 20 hertz. That's beta, alpha, theta, delta. Now we can entrain your brainwaves to any of those and pick the lock of a healing program in your physical body, your emotional body, your mental body. And then that dictates a series of treatments with a whole series of different soundtracks, each one devoted to one of those brain states to pick all the locks of all the, sort of those programs. So I had this harebrained idea that I wanted, and that's why it's sort of scientific sound healing approach. I wanted other spectrums of the vibration, sea of vibration. I know that those also would work. Electromagnetic frequency vibrations that are very precise would have an effect. Color frequency vibrations would have an effect. I had been trained in color therapy and read a whole bunch of books about that. However, what I had in mind was, if I took this frequency that balanced your nervous system and I started raising it by octaves, somewhere way up there, 40 octaves higher, would be the angstrom frequency range of color. So it means that I should be able to, if I could get a device that could dial up an exact angstrom frequency color, that's a perfect octave of the tone that makes this happen in your nervous system, I should be able to make this happen in your nervous system with a precisely tuned color frequency. So that would be a scientific approach to color therapy that's never been done before. And then I had this other harebrained idea in mind that had to do with the periodic table, converting the color spectral frequency of each element down 40 octaves and generating the sound equivalent of what the color spectrum of an element is. And a friend of mine turned me on to a physicist. I needed a physicist to help me do this so I didn't screw up. And the physicist I got connected with, you live just up the street from me, which is kind of funny. And he was the head director of a school, California Institute for Human Science, which was a graduate school and a research facility. And their job as a research facility was attempting to research the unresearchable, the chakras, chi energy in the meridians, things like that. They were trying to figure out scientific validatable ways to measure these things. When I met with him, he assured me that there was no device that could dial up an angstrom frequency. It didn't exist. So that's the pain of being too far ahead of your time. And then we talked about the elements. He said, yes, each element has a color spectral signature. So, for instance, oxygen, the one that you're talking about, has 250 precise angstrom frequency color lines, and each one has a specific type of brightness. And you can look this up online at the NIST National Instrument Standards site. It shows every element of the periodic table, what its full spectra of colors are. Some oxygen has 250, but some have 10,000, some have a few hundred. Each one is a fingerprint. So as a result of that meeting, I ended up being invited to teach at that school. And so therefore these courses in behavioral psychoacoustics, brain entrainment, a 40-hour course, and a 40-hour course in clinical neuroacoustics, how to influence the function of organs and glands with sound waves, became recognized by the state of California for PhD credits in colleges. So here I obviously moved to the right place, right? Eventually they built a whole school and I moved my office there. And we went about doing this project where we took every single color line of oxygen, which is an exact frequency accurate to 10 decimal points. And that's where I was thankful I was dealing with a physicist, because that was when I really first started to understand that there are two great forces in the universe that form everything that is. I was taught in school, it's all electromagnetic fields. In the electromagnetic spectrum of radio waves and television and X-ray and gamma rays and cosmic rays, right? You know, that whole kind of thing. But there's two forces, like yin and yang. One is electromagnetism and one is sound. Sound is not on the electromagnetic scale. It's the only thing in the universe that's not. It's pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency. It moves through air molecules when we talk. It moves through water 5 times better. It moves through a solid 5 times better than that, like your bones. Your body's a perfect medium, right? Water and bones. And so you can't, there is not a direct relationship by octaves between a sound and a color. It's apples and oranges. You have to do a mathematical conversion of the color angstrom frequencies. You have to multiply it by the speed of light and do a conversion to meters and a bunch of other stuff. And once you've done that, now you've got apples and apples, and now you have an octave relationship. If you don't do that little step, you've blown it. You've made an amateur's noob mistake, which is what we see out there kind of with the chakras, right? The first chakra is G, and it's red. And you're going, well, wait a second. What shade of red? Right, and the color spectrum is like 400 and 700 nanometers, and red is this whole zone of an infinite number of frequencies of red, from maroon up to bright red. So what are we talking about? Middle red? I mean, and once we've got that, then we can do the conversion. We can drop it down 40 octaves and come up with what note that is. But if we don't do that part, we've made a mistake. So anyway, so we did that. We took that first color, dropped it down. Now we've got a sound frequency accurate to 10 decimal points. I go into my recording studio and I generate that tone as a sine wave, and I put it in track 1. And then color number 2, track 2, color number 3, track 3, 250 tracks. It took us a week of manual labor to do this stuff. And then at the end of that, we're all crowded around because the moment of truth has finally arrived. I've got all the sine waves, all 250 of them, accurate to 10 decimal points. We do a similar conversion of the brightness of each of those color lines, converted to loudness, because brightness is linear, loudness is logarithmic. So you got to do another math thing. And then you go down and you make the volume level of each one of these 250 sounds to mirror the brightness. So now everything is exact. And we're going to hit the mix down button, which mixes all 250 tracks down to a single sound with 250 harmonics. A very complex timbre of a sound, the sound of oxygen. And so I do that mix down, and bang, there it is. It displays on the screen as this sound wave thing. And when you hit the play button, you can now hear it for the first time. And now we're all crowded around. It's like the moment when King Tut's tomb was finally opened. And they cut that cord that had been there for 3,500 years that locked the two handles together so nobody could go in, right? Cut that thing, hit the play button, and the sound that comes out is this very complex, sort of beautiful, low frequency sound with a lot of movement inside as these 250 harmonics interact. And their interaction creates a beat, a human heartbeat, by the way. Inside the sound of elemental oxygen is this sound that sounds like foom, 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 foom. And we're all looking at each other going, that sounds like a heartbeat. Are you hearing a heartbeat? It sounds like a heartbeat to me. And you know what I'm talking about. We took a whole semester of auscultation, listening, learning to listen to heartbeats and what a regular heartbeat sounds like, and various kinds of diseases of the heart sound like. And I'm going, that's a heartbeat sound. And we're going, no, that can't be right. And then we're going, no, wait a second, that's exactly right. That's exactly how the universe works. That what does the heart do? Pumps oxygen around. And so then, because we're at this school, this research center, and I've got students who've got papers to write and projects to do. Well, one of my students was there helping us do all this. So he says, okay, I want to put this to the test. I'm going to write a paper on this. He got 40 volunteers to come in and lay down on my sound table and reach baseline, lowest heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, right? We're monitoring that with the HRV. Then we put a pulse oximeter on their fingertip, which also measures the blood oxygen level of your capillary beds, and it measures heart rate. So we've got heart rate to heart rate calibrated between the finger clip and the HRV. And we play elemental oxygen through their body through that sound table. And you could see in a little over 40% of those people, the blood oxygen level went from 1 to 4 points higher. And the only way that you can get blood oxygen levels to go up is to breathe harder, or heart rate to go up. And we were monitoring that, so it wasn't happening. So if heart rate and respiration don't change, the only way to get blood oxygen levels up is to put a mask on and breathe oxygen. So essentially, their body was breathing the vibrational form of oxygen in the octave of sound, where we know already from acoustic physics that all octaves work. Right? So I should theoretically be able to calculate the color frequency octave of the tone that causes homeostasis and shine that color on you and watch the HRV screen do this thing with the color, right? A funny version of this, though, is if we go back to the wine glass, ping the wine glass, sing that note, and we calculate all the octaves down from that note. We drop below 20 hertz. Now it's not sound, it's brain frequencies. And if I use brainwave entrainment to entrain your brainwaves to one of those frequencies, I've unlocked wine glass consciousness. I should be able to make the wine glass vibrate by entraining your brainwaves to an octave of the wine glass frequency. Now, I know this sounds like madness, but this is like just straight
100%. Yeah.
Scientists, wherever the weirdness goes, you follow that with no question. You have an open mind like a child. You have no opinions. And that was sort of the lesson of the oxygen thing that was mind-blowing. And we had an experience with gold as well, with the with chi levels. So that school developed a device that could measure chi energy in the meridians in a computer and give you a printout, which also gave you a printout of your immune system and your autonomic response and the chi level. So elemental gold caused the chi level to go right off the chart in about a minute. And at the same time turned off the immune system. So we're going, well, okay, the good news is that we're boosting you to a super healing state. The bad news is you don't have an immune system anymore. But 15 years later, that's exactly what was needed for AIDS. Because when I was using biotuning with AIDS patients, their viral load was shooting 100 times higher because the biotuning frequency is normalizing the immune response, and the immune system is waking up and starting to do its thing. But when it attacks the cells that have been commandeered by the HIV, it just spews out more HIV and your viral load goes up. So I'm going, I can't treat AIDS patients anymore. I can't do that. Unless I can figure out some way to segment out the immune system and put it over here that doesn't respond. Elemental gold gave me that. Anyway, so the periodic table is sort of I mean, the implications here is if there's a real world physical response, if it's not just, an interesting, cool thing that you did, translating colors to the sound of an element, that it has practical value for making physical change in your body that could be used for healing, then that means that, what about compounds? What if you combine elements together and form a compound? You mean we've got now the complex frequency for green beans?
Broccoli.
Yeah, it's like mashed potatoes and gravy, and who needs to go shopping anymore? Just so that's sort of, it's actually a project sort of that's constantly, along with other projects, on the shelf. I've got 3,000 projects on the shelf that are all like that, all incredibly important, mind-blowing, world-changing. On the shelf, I've got time to do maybe 3 and money to do 1. So my life is a life of triage. So someday, hopefully, the ships will come in, and I can have a world-class, research center with 24 teams working on each project. They all get pulled off the shelf at the same time, and we'll see.
We'll hold space for that. So for the listening audience, as you mentioned, going below 20 brain frequency. So what I found amazing was when I first entered your world, so the classic, so to the listening audience, you've heard of the classic 4 brain waves and their frequencies. Dr. Thompson in his research facility, you're over 20 now that you identified and work with?
21 brain states we work with right now, but there's another half dozen that have come out through PubMed articles and stuff that I've seen in my news feeds. But yeah, and the evolution of that is another crazy story. You know, so I'm in practice in Virginia, in the largest holistic health center in Virginia, doing every kind of crazy, beautiful, holistic thing under one roof that I'd ever seen. The guy who owned that center became an important mentor in my life that set the stage for learning a whole bunch of stuff I never would have put together on my own. But the deeper lesson was how he could take the same information that I learned in school, anatomy, physiology, and clinical sciences and stuff, and think out of the box and use it in ways that you never would have presupposed. It really blew my brain open out of the box. And because of that, and on a basis of seeing 40 patients a day in this huge clinic, a well-oiled thing that was using, biomagnetic therapy and meridians, I developed a whole system of using magnets to simulate acupuncture points. It was this amazing atmosphere. We had a blood lab in the back for doing blood studies for nutrition. It just went on. And in that atmosphere is where I started exploring sound. I was there for 8 years, and the sound work was getting more mature, being able to influence organ function and gland function and see its effect on a blood study. The brain is when it really blew the lid off. The autonomic nervous system tells all systems what to do. It's also the stress handling system. So it's locked in a stress mode. It can't manage your body anymore. So the body starts to drift and symptoms pop up. That's why, the scientific community, realizes that stress is the ultimate cause of disease. Once I could see that I could influence that with the sound wave, the brain is an organ. What if I could rebalance the brain instead of the liver? And its job is to tell the liver what to do. Then all of a sudden I don't have to screw around with the liver anymore. I can go to a hole-in-one and let the body internal physician come back online and do all the jobs, that instead of me playing doctor. It also was a revelation because it was a big moment for me to realize that, wow, I was never the doctor in the first place. The healing didn't ever come from me or anything that I was doing, any tool I was using. As the true holistic idea is that there's an organic biological intelligence inside of you that knows how to grow your body out of 2 cells, differentiate the tissues, make it run on automatic without me knowing what's going on under the hood. And the forces there are a force of nature that are in a constant process of rebuilding tissues and balancing systems and organizing and synchronizing and healing on a continual basis. And if it's not doing that job, if you're sick, then something's blocking it from being able to do that job. That's the problem. And so any way that you can figure out to unblock the natural expression of the healing principles within inside the body, once you've liberated that, then everybody has to sort of step back because the patient's sitting there going, well, how long before this symptom goes away, doc? And I'm going, well, you're asking the wrong person, because I'm not the doctor here. I'm the physician's assistant. And you, small mind, who doesn't have a clue what's going on, is the patient. And under the hood here is the doctor. So you need to go inside and ask the real doctor how long it's going to be before this one gets fixed. Because in your world, in your small mind world, that symptom is number 1 on your list. But under the hood, where it's all arranged according to what's most important first for my survival, it may be
The
number
last.
25 down on the list. So you sort of have to release it all and surf the moment and allow it to sort of unfold. So that was always a lesson for me. It was a humbling experience for me. But as soon as I got that straight, then my practice just went into a whole other sort of level, where I've surrendered to that process, and it's not for me to figure out. It's like somebody comes in, with some really heavy duty condition, and a small mind is going, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with this? I don't know what to do with that." And big mind is going, "Well, that's not your job anyway. Don't worry about it. Just rebalance the nervous system, stand back." It's really the chiropractic principle. You're removing the blockages of how the brain communicates with the body by adjusting the spine and freeing up the brain's communication network to the organs back and forth, right? It's just that and then in the chiropractic world, there's the HIO people, the people who are the upper cervical people who don't believe that you need to adjust anything below C2 because
It's an extremity.
That's the brainstem with the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system, who really is telling the vertebra from C2 down what position they're supposed to be in. And it's not able to do that because of a blockage. So if you unblock this, then, and I'm just saying that the biotuning thing with the sound is one step higher than HIO. It's straight to the autonomic nervous system, making the ultimate adjustment of sympathetic, parasympathetic, and allowing it to tell C1 and C2 what to do. And the whole network starts to flow. And now any interventions that you've got in your tool chest of chiropractic techniques or physical therapy techniques or exotic holistic techniques, AK and meridians or whatever it is that you help, all of those are now to enhance the rehab so you heal faster. The internal physician is free. It's doing its job. It's going to take a certain amount of time for all that thing on the list. Is there any way that I can help to speed this up? That's where it gets to at that point. So that's pretty much how my practice worked I got in practice in 1980. So now I've got gray hair. I've actually grown into my own favorite haiku poem from when I was in my 20s. Here's the poem. I'm stopped suddenly by an old gray man looking at me out of my deep mirror. It's like, who the hell is that?
Yeah. I've scared myself a few times walking by the mirror because I'm still 24 and I'm like, whoa, somebody just broke in, right?
No, it's right. No, it's definitely one thing that happens when you age is you realize that aging only happens in the body.
Yes.
Under the hood, you're still a young person.
So one last question I know you've got 3,000 projects going on, and I'm going to plant a seed and with your permission, knock on your door again to see if we can keep unpacking some stuff in the near future, because there's a lot I want to unpack. Coherence and brainwaves and synchronizing hemispheres and all kinds of stuff. There was years ago, so when I was diving into breath in a big way, both as a practitioner and also from the world of freediving. And so watching, my own, and then also others, altered states of consciousness, yada, yada, yada. And then I was in Tibet many years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be in some of the really ancient temples and meditate, or be in the room while they meditated, since apparently I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And the similarity of their drumbeat to like a shamanic drumbeat, that rhythm, and then the oscillation of and the difference between oscillating it and just vocalizing it. And then I was checking to self, there was a cadence and a frequency even with breath. And I was like, oh, and noticing in my own self when I was hooking up to them, it was like 5 to 6 seconds in and I'm like, well, if that links to a rhythm and then a frequency, that's theta, right? In that range from a frequency place, but a rhythm place. I'm like, oh. So would you unpack that a little bit? The connection between breath cycles.
I mean, the first incidence of using quote primitive technology to entrain brainwaves and change states of consciousness was most likely shamanic drumming practices. And every culture has got some kind of drum thing going on. And when you start to analyze different cultures that use drums, from out and out shamans doing a drum ceremony, American Indians doing drum ceremonies, and India doing drum, anything that is used in a spiritual or a healing mode, the drum beats tend to center around what you just said, or somewhere around 5 hertz or so. 5 hertz is a sort of mid to deep theta. Theta is where you go when you're dreaming, and dreaming sleep is highly emotional. When I'm in my dreams, I can have a dream of the boogeyman chasing me to eat my brain, and I think it's real, and I'm freaking out because I think it's real. The point I'm getting at is, and you can have a wet dream on the other end. It's like you think it's real. That's how real it can get. So this is what's happening in theta is turbulence in the emotions. Emotions, that's where emotional healing takes place. As a matter of fact, I just happen to have a
nice frame drum.
A drum here, so right, that's about 5 hertz right there. I've done extensive research into that phenomenon. Recordings of shamans doing drum ceremonies, different drum kind of ceremonies from around the world, bring it back to my studio, sticking up, do spectral analysis. You can find out what the drum beat is. It's pretty much universal. It's theta. It's the dream walk. It brings up another point that the phenomenon of entrainment, why that's working in the first place, is deeply associated with how my body clocks work, the circadian rhythms. So in the center of your brain in the hypothalamus are these little tiny organelles that make up the hypothalamus. It's a very small little zone, and the organelles are very, very tiny. But one of those organelles is the origin of the parasympathetic nervous system, and one of them is the origin of the sympathetic nervous system. The anterior hypothalamic nucleus is the origin of the parasympathetic. I say that because I paid for those big words and I'm going to use them. It sounds cool. I mean, whoa, this guy knows the origin of the vagus nerve. Whoa, I say, yeah, you bet, because I worked for that and I paid for that, and I had to illustrate that in order to make an A.
It's great.
You get my money's worth, out of these $1 million words. But also, one of those little organelles is check this $1 million word, suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the origin of the body clocks. And it works in tight configuration with the pineal gland, where it's hardwired to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is derived from the same embryonic tissue as the eyeball. So it's got light-dark sensitivity. And it's using cues from the world, light, dark cues from the world, to set a timing sequence of a rhythm in my body functions. And that's based on light. There's magnetite in the frontal lobe of the brain, which is sensitive to magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields in the environment that I'm timing other rhythms to. And there's, a vibration sense network in my skin and my ears for the sound vibrations in the world. I'm dancing with the world. Why am I doing that? Why I'm setting my internal body rhythms and clocks to rhythms in the external world. And I dance with that and set my time rhythms to the world. And why do I do that? To save energy. Why am I trying to save energy? Because as complex and unbelievable as this body is, with all of its mind-boggling systems that all have to be intertwined and synchronized, the software programming in the biocomputer that runs that system has only basically got two rules. They're all very simple. Rule number one, survive at all costs. Because if you don't, what's the point? Right? So survive at all costs. That's the reason why we have such a massive response when we think our life is threatened. Sympathetic turns on, pulls all the energy from everywhere, puts in my muscle to fight for my life. Gut, elimination system, higher brain centers, immune system, all like gone. You don't want that to be persisting for 10 to 20 years.
No.
Because you're burning up all your resources. You can't digest your food properly. You can't eliminate toxins properly. Your immune system's screwed up and your higher brain centers got brain fog. Which
is where most of the world lives on a regular basis.
Which is where most of the world lives. And because you're under stress, you can't sleep. Biggest epidemic in the Western world, right? Chronic insomnia. It's a survival mechanism. So rule number two, there's two rules. Rule number one, survive at all costs. Rule number two, do no self-harm. And a subset of how you accomplish that is be as ecological as possible. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. Don't waste life energy. Be as efficient as possible. So when you study anatomy and physiology, you see that every structure has got double, triple duty. Right? Bones, all the bones in your body, the long bone in your leg. If you look at it in X-ray, it's got tuberculae, it's hollow, like a sponge. Makes it lighter. Otherwise, you'd have 360 pounds of just bone to lag around. So now it's lighter, and it actually turns out that it's more flexible, so it's actually stronger when it's that way. That's two. Number three, it's bone marrow. It's where your red cells, where your blood marrow, blood is manufactured in the bones and the blood in the bone marrow. So three different things from one structure. And so if I can tie myself to rhythms that are already in the world, I save energy by dancing with a partner. And that sort of starts to give you an insight into man-made rhythms in the environment. Man-made rhythm, like right now, you're sitting in a room and the wiring in your walls is 60 hertz. So there's a 60 hertz electromagnetic field impacting your body right now, and your body is specifically looking for electromagnetic field fluctuations to time yourself to in nature. It's not designed to understand that there might be a man-made one that's not natural. It doesn't get that, and it tries to dance with this 60 cycle hum, and that's a dance partner that's not dancing back. So I just got fooled into dancing with a partner where I thought I was going to save half the energy, and I actually spend twice as much. So it burns my systems out. It's like now a stress into my system. I'm dancing with a partner that doesn't dance back, and it's costing me energy when I was dancing to save energy. Duh. Then I escape that and go outside. Now I've got 5,000 radio frequencies, AM and FM and shortwave 1 and 2 and 3 and military frequencies and 5G and smart meters, and oh my God, I'm supposed to dance with that? I mean,
Adapt to this. Yeah.
There is a hidden disease in the world called the 21st century that we were never designed to deal with. I mean, this biological system, its setup is to make slow evolutionary changes to planetary scale changes that happen over thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. I've got plenty of time to make little manipulations of my DNA over the course of a series of generations as we slowly adapt to changes in the environment. But since the Industrial Revolution at the beginning of the 20th century, all hell broke loose, and it's accelerating. I mean, the 21st century is madness. I mean, we don't eat real food anymore. There's junk in there. There's chemicals, there's preservatives, there's dyes that harm us. There's fumes. There's a pace of the 21st century. There's flickering lights of televisions. There's emotional, people are in the business of poking your emotions. So you buy a product. It's like
dopamine hits. Dopamine hits.
I mean, the 21st century is madness. It's a marathon of stresses for a body that was designed for a sprint. Right? Your body's still running a program from 20,000 years ago. You wake up with the sun, you grab your spear, you go chase some little stupid animal, and your sympathetics both turn on. It's a straw fire that's going to burn out in 5 or 6 minutes. Somebody's going to get exhausted first. Their breakfast. Right? And then you're going to cook it and eat it. Parasympathetic turns on, it comes back. That's your work day. That's what we're designed for, not this insanity. And so I sort of believe that what I'm seeing with the heart rate variability readout of everybody who comes in, where nobody's got a normal autonomic response. Everybody's running a hot fight or flight response all the time, and they can't sleep, and they're burning up all the resources. And after a while, I'm thinking, statistically, it's not possible for everybody to have the same exact condition. Unless there's some underlying factor I'm not aware of. And then the underlying factors started to become apparent. It's the 21st century itself that's doing
societal
this.
program, yeah.
The body is stuck in an impossible situation where it's designed for a sprint and it's in the midst of a never-ending marathon. What am I supposed to do? And so its survival approach to that situation is to put your foot on the gas and bullnose your way through it all with momentum as part of your survival strategy. Momentum, keep it rolling. And then at nighttime, when it's time to go to bed,
turn on the lights and keep going.
You're afraid to let go of this survival thing. You're reluctant to let go of that. For instance, if I want to drive to the top of a big hill, part of my strategy is going to be to build up a head of steam. I'm going to hit 80 miles an hour when I hit that hill, so I've got momentum. Right? I'm not going to be inspired to stop halfway up the hill and pull over to the side of the road and get a good night's sleep. And that's sort of the situation we're all in. And I'm sorry that the old standard techniques that used to work before this industrial revolution and all of human history up to this point, like meditation practices, they're just not good enough. They're not powerful enough to handle this. We're not living the kind of life that we can spend even an hour to meditate. Who's got an hour? But let's say you did have an hour. How is that hour supposed to compete with the whole rest of the day that's bombarding you every day, 7 days a week, month after month, year after year? You think 1 hour is going to hold a candle to that? No. So we have to now have high-tech meditation. We have to use the very technology that's destroying our lives to save us. That the technologies we've got are mind-blowing. The medical technologies of monitoring what's going on in the brain, what's going on in the autonomic nervous system, what's going on in your blood, what's going on in your body is astounding. The technology we've currently got with high-tech instrumentation to control sound and light and electromagnetic fields, we have the tools. We can see what does enlightenment look like. So let's hook up a whole bunch of monks from different countries and put brain mapping computers on them and stick their head in an fMRI machine and see what's going on in there. And once we see what it looks like, now we know what the brain pattern is of this high state of meditation. We can use these tools over here to entrain your brain waves to that pattern. Now, because nobody can explain to you what you're supposed to do. You say, hey, I want to meditate. How do I do that? What are you supposed to say? You can't, there's no explanation in small mind that's going to get small mind to truly understand what has to be done for big mind to take over and small mind to exit out the back door. No, if I can measure monks over here meditating and see what their brains look like, and I can entrain your brainwaves exactly to that pattern, I just now viscerally, without words, without explanations, put you smack dab in the middle of an experience that would be impossible for me to describe.
And saved you 60 years in a cave.
Yeah, all of that stuff can be wiped out. I mean, when you're meditating for 30 years in a monastery in order to figure out what to do, and the very first monk came out from behind the monastery with the very first Tibetan bowl. Somebody had to make the first one. Right? The very first Tibetan bowl, they come out from behind, they've got this thing, and everybody's looking, well, what's that? They say, well, I've been piecing this back together, and when I rub it, this interesting thing happens, and everybody goes, whoa, that shut my mind off. All of that inner work I've had to do for 20 years to get my mind to shut off is instantly shut off when I do this thing. It's like, wow, you just invented a high-tech device for shutting off the mind. And now I wish I'd known that 20 years ago. Right? The beauty is that inside this bowl, that sound that you're hearing has got a pulsing in it. Wah, 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 wah. The pulsing is what? A brainwave speed. It's a brainwave entrainment device, these guys. So just, this happens to me all the time. Just when I think just when I'm patting myself on the back for all this cool work I'm doing with brain entrainment and high-tech devices and 30 or 40,000 bucks worth of equipment in a recording studio and monitors, I find out the Tibetans did it 3,000 years ago with no equipment. This sort of pisses me off. I mean, but it's, I don't know, it's, the old stuff always returns. This concept of brain entrainment has been going on for a very long time, but it's all been intuitive. If I'm an experienced meditator or a shamanic journey person, a shaman, and I start pounding this drum, close my eyes, that my state of consciousness is going to start to exhibit in my body the same rhythms my brainwaves are doing. So it's natural that I'm going to start centering at a 5 hertz thing that feeds back to changing my brainwaves into just the state I'm familiar with going to. And I realized that at this drum speed, it amplifies what I do already. And now I realize that if I do that in the presence of other people, somehow it brings them there. I may not know anything about brain entrainment or any of the other stuff, but I do understand the rhythms of nature. And so the same thing with Tibetan bowls. For those people who understand how to make a real Tibetan bowl, where they're doing that bowl and seeing what it feels like and tuning that bowl until it's right, That's very different than the street vendors who are making them for tourists and don't have a clue. And in that sense, it's the same thing with the world at large, where we see a whole giant marketplace of brainwave entrainment soundtracks sold by all kinds of different people with all kinds of different claims. And, we're back to the 80-20 rule, the bell curve rule. 80% of your body is supporting tissue, bone and blood and lymph and sinew and muscle, and 20% is governing tissue, brain, spinal cord, nerve roots. 2% governs the whole show, autonomic nervous system, consciousness itself that reads the blueprint. Society is the same way. 80% of people are supporting tissue. I hate to put it that way. 80% of the people wake up in the morning with an alarm clock, go to work, make money, come back, make babies, put them through school until you die. 20% is governing tissue, and that's in our society. It's in the world. It's government, multinational corporations, billionaires with more money than all of us have put together, that steer that ship. 2% are truly behind the whole thing. God knows what that is. Illuminati, aliens from outer space. I mean, I don't know. Secret enclave of enlightened people is what I would hope. But this whole concept of in the marketplace, where we've got all these soundtracks for brain entrainment with binaural beats and all the rest of that, 80% of those people don't have a clue. They're entrepreneurs jumping on a bandwagon to make a buck. They don't really understand the anatomy and physiology of what they're doing. But binaural beats and brain entrainment is such a powerful force of how the body works that it works anyhow. May not be the optimal way. And some people, I'm sure, are making enough mistakes that it causes problems. But for the 20% who do know what they're doing, the real people who've got research behind them or clinical experience and feedback, now this becomes an unimaginably powerful tool for changing consciousness, for healing. Now we have the real possibility, for the first time in all of our human history, to use the science and technology that we've created and curl it back into ourselves and manage a new scientific approach to consciousness expansion and enlightenment. We have a real possibility of doing that now. So it's not, and I see that movement arising. I see the counter force of the sort of shitstorm that we're living in this universe. And when we look deeper into what Nobel quantum physicists are describing about the true nature of reality, it sounds like reading the Upanishads or the Sutras of Patanjali, 4,000-year-old text in Sanskrit from India. It's the same stuff that they were saying all the way back then that Nobel Prize-winning physicists are, quote, discovering about the nature of reality now. The implications are not going to go away, but the public at large, it's arising out of the field itself as a new awareness. And you know, the 3 or 4 years ago, the scientific community had a press conference where they announced the newest discoveries in the nature of reality and quantum physics now is the new standard that scientists accept now worldwide about the nature of reality. Number one, consciousness is a requirement for reality to exist. And it's like, what? Because what that brings to mind is that the old logic question of if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound if nobody's there? And from this standpoint, if there's nobody there, there's no forest. There's a potential for a forest and a potential for a tree to fall, but it's floating in a field of probabilities to be a forest and to be a tree that falls until consciousness arrives on the scene to witness, and all of that wave collapses into particles and becomes a forest and becomes a tree that does or does not fall. That's pretty profound. It means that the old physics of Newton, where the apple drops on, hits your head, and all the laws and the fancy math that we use to calculate galactic orbits and physics in the high school lab and all the rest, it seems to work quite well if you don't need to be too exact in a quantum field level of exactness. Where we have a nice, tidy, objective universe of things, planets and nebula and star systems, and
known and predictable.
And all of it is real and all of it is there. It's objectively there. Whether people are there or not anywhere in the universe to witness it, that is now out the window. Science now recognizes that is not the way the universe is. The universe of all those things are only a potential to be those things unless somebody witnesses it. That's pretty heavy duty. That it's and then the second edict was even more crazy. The future creates the past. Now, in order to wrap your mind around that one, you've got to understand where all this spins from is Schrodinger's cat paradox equations. And for those who don't understand that, which probably most of everybody, Schrodinger was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who made an astounding discovery about the nature of reality that was so astounding he wanted to run out and tell everybody he knew. But he couldn't tell anybody because it's just math equations on a big blackboard. And the only people who would be able to understand it is other people like him, high-level mathematician physicists. So he created the world's first thought experiment. A thought experiment is an allegorical, metaphorical story that sort of illustrates what the math shows. And the story, the most famous one of all, is the Schrodinger's cat paradox. So here's how he tried to describe what he saw about the nature of reality. You have a box, and you put a cat in the box, and a bottle of cyanide, and a hammer suspended above the bottle of cyanide, and you put the lid on it, give it a good shake, and you don't know what happened. Either the hammer dropped, broke the cyanide, killed the cat, or it did not. One of the two. You're not going to know until later you lift the lid and take a look, right? So according to quantum physics, at the moment you give the box a shake and you don't know what happened, the cat actually splits into a probability cloud of living cat, dead cat. It's undecided. You flip the coin, and instead of coming down, the coin is just floating there, spinning. It's not going to drop and reveal if it's heads or tails until somebody arrives on the scene to witness what happens with the coin. So let's pick this apart and say that I'm a scientist doing this experiment, and I put the cat and everything in the box, and I put the lid on, I give it a shake, I make notes, I note the time, and then I put it over here under a spotlight and make notes. Now it's 5 minutes has passed, and I lift the lid and I took a look, and there's a dead cat. And my first inclination is to say, oh, so when I shook the box, the cat died. No, what happened when you shook the box was the cat went into the twilight zone of living dead cat. And that didn't get decided until 5 minutes later when you looked. When you looked, you collapsed that wave into a dead cat. That means you just created the past event. Because in the past, when you shook it, it went into the twilight zone. It didn't become a dead cat yet. Not until you look 5 minutes later. That's pretty crazy stuff. But they see it all the time. This is the reality of the quantum field. This is what happens. Time flows forwards and backwards. Things pop in and out of existence all the time. Everything is a probability field until I'm witnessing it. The double slit experiment, where you shine a light beam of photons through two parallel slits, right? If you're looking, the pattern of shadows on the screen behind appears to be what you would expect. Photons come to the two slits. You've got two light zones there. But if you look away, the particles collapse into a wave, and all the patterns on the screen form multiple lines, as if it's water going through those two slits, creating interference pattern ripples and displaying as light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. If you turn around and look again, that all collapses to the two slit zones. This is like crazy stuff, right?
The observer impacting the outcome.
And so what does that say about double-blind studies? I mean, you already know that double-blind studies are in trouble because, you've got a drug company who wants FDA approval. FDA says if you can get 70% of the people in group A who are given the drug to respond, and they don't, and not too many of them die, then we'll stamp our approval, right? So you've got group A that gets the drug, group B that gets a placebo, a sugar pill, and group C that is the control group. And it's double blind because the doctor who's passing out pills doesn't know which pills are passing out. That's the double blind. Now, they already know that group B, the sugar pill group, 35% of those people are going to respond as if they got the drug. They're going to have physical responses. That's the placebo effect. The hidden statistic that nobody seems to notice is group A, which has the 70% response that gets a stamp of approval. 35% of that group is also a placebo response, because the placebo response doesn't stop at the door of group A. Right? So that means that when you count the whole thing up, really 35% response in group B, 35% response in group A, that's 70% placebo response and 35% drug response in every trial that's ever been done with any drug that's ever been put on the market. And why isn't everybody, doing all the research into the placebo response? Because you can't patent that and you can't get a billing code.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's the world. It's the world we live in. But there's one other thing. The double-blind aspect of that is also in trouble because the doctor who's passing out the pills doesn't know which pills he's giving out, but somebody does. On the other side of that door is a lab with a bunch of coworkers that he spends his life with. And guess what? They're all quantum entangled to each other at a collective unconscious level. So his small mind may not know, but big mind knows because it's entangled with the brains of big minds of all the people behind who loaded those pills into the different bins that they didn't tell him which is what. It's all up for grabs. It's it's pretty crazy. It's so yeah, that's the world we live in. Question everything. It's just a constant system of dismantling erroneous belief systems. When I sold my practice and my house and stuff in Virginia and moved to California to pursue this sound work full time, I set up a huge center in San Diego, a brain spa, and my clinical space where I'm pursuing brain entrainment and HRV, not HRV, balancing the nervous system with sound waves. HRV hadn't shown up yet. I'm contacted by a company in Holland who had developed a brand new type of EEG machine, the first EEG machine that could plug into a home computer instead of having to buy a dedicated EEG system for 30 grand, a Lexicor system or something. So they sent this to me for free because I'm a famous guy and they're hoping I'm going to endorse it. But they want me to check it out. So all of a sudden, somebody gave me an EEG machine so I can hook up every single patient for 2 years and observe their brain waves, observe the brainwave entrainment phenomenon, and observe the fact that the right-left hemispheres synchronize their activity when you've got headphones on with binaural beats. Mm. And in that process, I noticed that some of the people that I was in training to the deepest delta were drifting off into slower brain waves than delta. Hmm. Delta is 0.5 to about 4 hertz. And I'm seeing slower than 0.5 activity on my EEG. Now, I don't know what's going on. I'm not the greatest EEG expert. I'm thinking, well, this is a new machine. Maybe there's something wrong here. But in every case that I saw that happen, after the session, this person gets up with some tale to tell. I was out of my body. I was up by the ceiling. I was watching you do your thing. I went through the thing. I went home. I found my missing keys. People reporting precognitive experiences during the week. All kinds of, spiritual revelations, all this interesting stuff was happening every time I saw brainwaves go outside of the box, below delta. And I'm, thinking to myself, wait a second, they told us that this is established and this is so. There's beta, alpha, theta, delta. That's what's so, and there's nothing beyond that. And I'm seeing something beyond that. I'm seeing, hey, there's no basement in this house below delta. And I'm going, oh, excuse me, but I'm seeing a basement here, and I started doing a, interlibrary search. These are back in the days of Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves, long before Google arrived on the scene. Nobody's reporting below delta brain activity. And I'm thinking to myself, well, hot damn, I think I might have discovered something. I mean, I can't believe it because there's EEG researchers all over the country with expensive machinery. How come they never
Nobody
saw
caught
it?
Yeah.
How could it just be like me, little old me in my office in San Diego, have made a earth-shaking discovery of a new brainwave? It's like pretty hard to believe. But I'm seeing the results with people right in front of me. I'm seeing it on my screen. Please don't tell me that's not there. Years later, I did a couple of years of clinical work with a neurofeedback practitioner who was a former student of mine. And we're intentionally combining brain entrainment with neurofeedback. But I was able to ask her, have you ever seen below delta brain activity? And she said, no. And then she said, I wouldn't be able to see it even if it was there. Well, why not? Because all these expensive systems don't show below 1 hertz. Man, that doesn't even show the whole range. The whole range is down to 0.5, 1 brain pulse every 2 seconds. They're not even showing that. They're not showing above 30 hertz beta because they don't believe it's there. They put a box.
Put a box around it. Calibrated out of the box.
Now, even if it's there, you can't see it.
That's funny.
And now I'm going, hot damn. I guess I'm not the great genius I thought I was. I'm just surrounded by idiots.
Perspective's everything, right? Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
That's funny.
It's like, and it was the distillation of the human condition. I walk away from that going, where's my box?
Right. What must not be cannot be.
How many boxes do I live in? And then I start to realize that my whole life is a series of boxes. It's like the
Russian dolls,
Ukrainian dolls. It's like boxes within boxes within boxes of belief systems that have been loaded into my brain my whole life from kindergarten. That, you know, this is a cool little story. When I was going to first grade, the morning routine was, you know, my mom would help me get dressed. So she'd tie my shoes. She'd make some lunch and put it in a lunch box, and that was the routine. And I'd go to school. And so this particular day, I'm on the playground and I fall down and skin my knee pretty bad and rip my pants, and it's all bleeding. And it's not earth shaking. I'm not going to die, but I want my mommy. I want to go home. I don't want to be here in school anymore. And the school nurse calls my mom and has her come down and pick me up. So she comes down, picks me up. When she walks in the door, I'm putting my shoes on and tying my shoes. And she goes, "Jeffrey, you're tying your shoes." I'm going, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, I didn't know you could tie your shoes." "Oh yeah, they taught us how to tie our shoes." She said, "Well, how come I'm tying your shoes every morning?" And I thought, I don't know. I thought that was the rule.
It's part of the deal. Yeah.
I thought that was like it. It's always been that way. It's like it was my first time I realized that my mind was in a box. And all kinds of variations and versions of that is the lives we live. I mean, the biggest obstacle that I saw with my patients was for them to come to the realization that you are not ordinary.
Mm.
You're not an ordinary person. That the fact that you're here alive in the continuum, in the biggest game in town, right?
Makes you amazing.
You won. So I had this experience on my sound table doing my own process on myself, right? When I was born, that was my first near-death experience. I almost died from anemia. Now I know why, because they cut the cord too soon. 30% of your blood is in the placenta, duh, including all the immune factors and and the vitamin K and all the other stuff that they want to get you a shot afterwards, because it's just like drives me crazy. But so I almost died from anemia. Okay, so, and then I ended up with an allergy to breast milk. Also, because they clamped the cord too soon, they cut the cord too soon, I did get the immune factor. So now I've got an allergic response to my mother's milk.
Mm.
And when I found that out, I'm thinking to myself, who has an allergy to mother's milk? I mean, what's the spiritual metaphor for that one? You know what I mean? And so that's what I'm going into this session for, to work on that. Why would anybody have an allergy to mother's milk? Because it's bigger than that. It's the mother's breast, it's the suckling thing, it's the and I had this genuine sort of shamanic vision thing that happened on my own sound table. You know, I'm in the intergalactic Olympics, the swimming contest, and I'm pulling out all the stops. I'm pulling every ounce of energy right from my toenails to make this, and I win. And of course, this is the sperm hitting the egg, right? This is the intergalactic swimming contest. I'm the sperm who hit the egg. I'm the one who won the race. 50 million sperm, I win. And I can't believe it, because I don't believe that I'm gold medal material.
Mm.
I don't believe that I'm that special.
I'm not worthy of this honor.
I just can't believe it. And so my knee-jerk response is to think that this must be some kind of mistake, that can we get a photo finish of that? I just can't believe that I'm the one. You know, can we like replay the film or something? And however, the prize, the gold medal prize, is to get a body in the biggest game in the universe. You get to be here in this experience, being alive. And you're in this big game, And all the other people that are with you in this game are all gold medal winners too.
Mm.
And because the prize was so big, I decided to not raise my hand and question, but to hold it and get my medal and get my body, with the feeling in my soul that I was a thief in heaven, that I didn't really deserve this, but I took it anyway, right? That was my deep, dark secret, that I felt out of all the people in the whole world who have ever been in the world or ever will be in the world, I alone was the cheat of all time. And when I realized that that's not the way the universe works. There's no way that like God would like
Whoops. Yeah.
not be able to see that I did that, or that because the whole of creation comes from me, that I didn't win fair and square. When I realized that I actually won fair and square, and the possibilities of me not doing that are zero, and I realized that this is what it feels like to be a gold medal winner, and embrace that, layers of very deep and dark stuff blew away from me. And in that moment, I realized why every relationship I've ever been in crashed. I got a pink slip. Why all the different things that didn't work in my life didn't work. Because I couldn't be truly who I am, because I had this deep, dark secret that I was hiding from the person who wanted to love me, hiding from what I wanted to do in my life, hiding from everything that I thought I deserved because I didn't believe I deserved it. I got out of jail big time. And when patients would come to me, people who had the big belief system is, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I'm not going to survive this, I don't have what it takes. I tell them that story and I say, don't you tell me you don't know what it takes. You did that already. You know how to pull the energy from your toenails and grab the brass ring. You already have that under the hood. You know how to do that. Don't tell me you don't know what to do. That's bullshit.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. You're hiding behind a facade of, oh, I'm ordinary. That's bullshit. You're important. You're a magnificent thing that's here on purpose for some very specific reason. And because you're not pursuing that, you're sick.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, just this last few minutes right there, the beautiful sharing that Dr. Jeffrey just shared of his journey, right? And how many of us are still running those patterns because it hasn't been resolved. To keep running this.
Is it Pandora's box? There's layers of that for all of us. And then it just becomes a matter of
dismantling.
Meticulously dismantling and pursuing every rock, turning over every rock and hosing it down and being methodical, and knowing in your heart and soul that nothing is beyond the possibility for you, because you already won the biggest prize in town. Everything else is small potatoes, as they say in Montana, right? Or Idaho. Idaho is potatoes, right?
So synchronistically, the last 2 weeks, I was inspired by my community we covered what we called the 6 big lies. First, it started with 3, and then we did another session because they liked it so much. And God is outside of you. You can't heal yourself. You can't have the life of your dreams. You're not enough. You have to earn love, and you're controlled by your genetics. That's what they picked as the topics, and we unpack those. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as you just heard Dr. Thompson share, right? That the essence, like at the quantum level of who you be, then it eradicates the story of I'm not enough and that's not possible, right? That's just a program that's stuck inside your neurology. And he has tools right now for you and I to engage in, right? So check out the link in the show notes, go to a site, and there are a plethora of tools. The gift of his consciousness married with the scientific fervor to bring frequency and vibration and harmonics to simply receive so your system remembers and it gets to come back online. And then the mud falls off the light, right? Because the light's already there. The well-being's already there. The stuff we've caked onto is just the stories. And it starts to crack off and fall away, right? It's a process of undoing. And that's where his genius is. So step into his world, check out everything he's got to offer for sure. I've got so many I still call them CDs, but tracks now, to continue my evolution journey, to keep remembering and go to the next iteration of, I thought I was out of the boxes. I was out of those boxes, but found another one. And every Sunday, right? Every Sunday, the live streams. Yes. I'm
just going to say, in a future time, we can cover the other brain frequencies.
Please, 100%.
I covered the first one.
Yeah.
I called that epsilon below.
So yeah. So this, when they say he's the world leading, he's the man when it comes to this part of the world, right? In the sense of healing and consciousness and awareness and using sound and frequency and vibration to do that, right? And so, Dr. Thompson, I'm immensely grateful for your presence, your time to share with me and the listening audience. Super grateful. And for sure, I would love to have you come back and keep unpacking and sharing your brilliance. It would be a true honor and a privilege.
Sure, that'd be great. It's just a scheduling issue.
Oh, I understand. Not that 3,000 projects have any time constraints. And all your other speaking gigs,
I'm sort of the boss, but I'm also the worker. So
right. Yeah, when you own the restaurant. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into this episode of the TAO-Living podcast. And definitely share this episode with those that you love so they too can listen, feel, and remember. Until next time, abundant blessings. Ciao.
To connect further and dive deeper, you can always reach me at my website, loucorleto.com, LOUCORLETO, or in the social channels, Facebook, loucorleto.official, Instagram, Lou_Corleto, Twitter, Lou_Corleto, and LinkedIn. Until next time, remember who you be. Abundant blessings.